I ended up attempting suicide in December on Christmas Eve. And when I say it was really bad, I could see myself over my body, and my grandfather was like running to me and screaming, "What did you do? What did you do?" and like shaking me, and I woke up.
Hello everyone, it's Riel here, it's Cup of Tea, and today I am joined by mental health advocate and the host of Inspiring My Generation, the amazing podcast, Francesca Reicherter, right? We spent some time off screen going through her surname, so that was a big moment for me actually, getting that right. Francesca, thank you for joining me. It's a real honor to have you on the Cup of Tea podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited, and I'm really well. I'm spending a lot of time with my family right now, so I'm just over the moon happy.
Oh, that's
You?
amazing. Yeah, not too bad, thank you. I'm really good. Took a little bit of a break from the podcast for a little while, and I took a break from the whole of social media actually for a while. And yeah, it's actually nice because it geared me up to come back. And I kind of needed like a bit of a mental reset. You know. So that's kind of what I was doing, just resetting, charging the batteries, and coming back and really just seeing what's out there, and having amazing people like you on the show is an incredible way to come back, I think. Yeah, so not too bad. Like I mentioned in the intro, you are the host of Inspiring My Generation, the podcast, which I've been watching, and I'm just so inspired by what you do, the guests you bring on. And it was really through the podcast. Obviously, we have a mutual friend in Alessandra. But when I watched some of your podcasts, I was like, oh man, she's really incredible. Your journey and the way you speak to people in the podcast, and you get their journeys and their stories out of them. It's really inspiring. So actually, I think it'd be quite interesting to know a little bit about your story. Inspiring My Generation. Where did that come from? What inspired that?
So, Inspiring My Generation originally started as a blog when I was 12, so over a decade ago now. And I was struggling with eating disorders, severe anxiety, and depression by the age of 5. I always felt like I couldn't be happy. So by the time I was 12, I was like, maybe I can't be happy, but I can make other people happy and encourage other people to live their best lives and to forgive themselves. And maybe it would help me in that process. So it started as a blog, then it turned into a podcast in high school, then it turned back into a blog during undergrad. And right around that time, my mental health really started to decline. So at the end of high school, I had a really, really bad eating disorder to where I had like patches on my skin that were losing color, and I was throwing up constantly, and it was giving me severe anxiety. I couldn't stay awake. And I got into college, and all this anxiety continued to build up. I would like throw up blood from anxiety. I wouldn't sleep for 2 weeks before exams because I was so stressed, not of the exam itself, but what if I fail the exam, fail out of school? What do I do? I kind of went to the worst case scenarios all the time. And then at the end of 2018, 3 weeks before I was graduating, I lost my grandfather in a car accident. And my grandmother was also in the car accident. Thankfully, she survived. But those two people are my best friends in the whole world. I FaceTime my grandfather 3 times a day, every morning for coffee, every day after class to tell him all about it. And he would be working. He retired as a barber, and he would stop what he was doing to listen to my day. So all of his customers knew who I was and knew if they had an appointment at the time I got out of class, they were going to hear about my day. And then every night for dinner, he could be out with friends, and he would still make sure to answer and show me what he was eating. And I didn't know how to live without him. I really didn't. And I came back early from school, so I still had, I think, 2 exams and a presentation left. And I left, and I told my teachers, like, I can't do it. I have to be by my grandmother's side. She was in the hospital. I was so, so blessed that all my teachers were like, you have an A already. We know that you work really hard. We're going to just pass you and you're good. So I went and I stayed, and I slept in a hospital bed in a chair next to my grandmother for 10 days, and just spent all my time taking care of her, not really learning how to grieve my grandfather. I ended up attempting suicide in December on Christmas Eve. And when I say it was really bad, I could see myself over my body, and my grandfather was like running to me and screaming, "What did you do? What did you do?" and like shaking me, and I woke up. And my uncle was the one who really helped me get through it because he sat and talked to me. We laid in bed and watched The Wolf of Wall Street together, and he just kind of wouldn't leave my side while everyone else was celebrating Christmas together. And no one else really knew what was going on except for I think one other person. So he talked to me about the importance of going to therapy, that it was normal to go to therapy, that there was medications available, but also supplements over the counter that I could get and take to kind of help me with my brain health and help me in the time being. So then I went back for my master's program, but 27 days later, my uncle had died by suicide. So I withdrew from my master's, and I was actually in town at the time, and I was babysitting for my aunt and uncle, and they were going out. And I told them, make sure you're home by 7 a.m. Like, please, please be home. They weren't home in time. And I was like so angry with them. And then my aunt had called me crying. And I went over to the house and found out that he was dead. And I arrived with the cops. So it was just a very overwhelming experience. And I didn't know how to grieve my grandfather. My uncle was like that next really strong force in my life that was kind of like my lifeline at the time. And to lose him to suicide after he was the one who helped me through, I couldn't cope. I moved in with my aunt and little cousins and tried so hard to take care of them. Maybe it was a way to avoid feeling. Maybe it was a way to I had a lot of guilt of what happened because I felt like if I wasn't home and I didn't babysit, none of that would have happened. So I wanted to take care of them. I wanted to take away their pain. We were done with them, but I never learned how to grieve. And I was surrounded by constant pain because I didn't leave their side. So I ended up attempting 2 more times, hospitalized in a psych ward when I saw how many people out there were also struggling. And not just struggling with their mental health, but financially, they couldn't afford to be in a psych ward. They couldn't afford medication or treatment afterwards. So they're getting put on medication inside the psych ward. And then when they come out, they can't continue it. That causes you to spiral. Or getting the wrong medication, not having family and friends to be there for them. I was so, so blessed that I had so many people around me. And at the time, I felt so alone. But looking back at it, I was beyond lucky and blessed that my entire family showed up when I was in the psych ward. You were allowed 2 guests, but I had 10 every visiting time. And my one uncle, my other uncle who is still alive, he really took care of me a lot. He like babysat me every day afterwards and made sure that I knew I wasn't alone. I was so lucky and I didn't realize it at the time. And I spent the next year in therapy, and I did neurofeedback therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. And then I went to a psychiatrist to get medication. And then I decided that it wasn't enough that I was getting help because I was in such a fortunate position that I could afford all the treatment options available. I was never in a place where I was like, I can't afford this, I can't get treatment. And it was bothering me that so many people couldn't. And I decided I wanted to be a voice for those who lost theirs to suicide, but also for those who were barely hanging on, because you deserve to be heard. And if you can't speak up for yourself, somebody should speak up for you. So I took Inspiring My Generation, which was always my life plan. I always said I wanted to be like Oprah Winfrey. She was the coolest person. She is the coolest person in the world to me. And since I was 12, it's in my middle school and high school files, wants to be Oprah Winfrey. So I decided to launch Inspiring My Generation as a nonprofit, as a 501c3, and to start a podcast series and start my journey with that. So that's kind of how it all came to be.
I am so sorry. That's what I kind of want to start with, and just say extend my condolences for the loss that you've had in your life with your uncle and your grandfather. Oh man, yeah, it really does make sense when I see your passion for mental health, when I see your dedication to spreading people's messages and spreading your own messages. And yeah, it really does make sense to me. You know, what you've been through is wow, it's hard to even fathom it, to be honest. And yeah, I'm just really admiring your strength and dedication now that you've taken that and you've used that as fuel and ammunition to go out there and help to prevent suicide from occurring, and let people know that there is things that can be done to help people, you know. So yeah, wow, inspiring my generation. Listen to the podcast, guys. If there's anything you do today, go and listen to the podcast. You mentioned something about medication there a few times. I was actually wondering, because medication seems to be a very, not controversial, but some people have differing opinions on the relationship of medication and what it can actually do for your mental health, and of course the side effects that come with it. Some people say the side effects are not worth it. I was wondering what kind of effect the medication actually had on you, because some people say it can't fix the actual root cause of a trauma or something you're going through, grief. You know, it doesn't fix that, but it's a very physical thing, I guess, with the medication. How did you respond to it?
So I'll tell you, I am the most person who's most against medication in the world, and I do take medication. But I was that person who was like, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to take it. When I was in the psych ward, I was put on antidepressant. I went into a manic episode where I was screaming at people to stab me. It sent me into this manic episode. And I thought, medication doesn't work for me. That's it. I'm never taking it again.
The
I was on the
medication,
wrong medication. Yeah, but I was on the wrong medication. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people, is that you get put on the wrong medication, you have a side effect, and you think medication doesn't work for me, or you hear a story about it and you're like, okay, I'm staying away from medication. But when I got put on the right medication for bipolar disorder, my life changed. I
okay.
mean, I was at a point where I could go from I'm a naturally very high energy, bubbly person, but I would be so confident, so happy. I was on top of the world. And then I would randomly go from that to on the floor screaming and crying I didn't want to be here anymore. And when I got this medication, I'm at a point where I'm not over the top, so confident, not that person anymore. But I'm also not that person that's on the floor crying every day. They don't want to be here. So it's helped to balance me out. And I was so against it in the beginning. I was so afraid of it because there is that stigma. There is all that misinformation out there that it doesn't help you. And no, it doesn't solve the underlying trauma. It doesn't get rid of any of the grief. It doesn't help you process, but it can help stabilize you in a way that allows you to process. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. It's not the answer and the solution. It's part of the solution, part of the answer.
That's a really nice way of putting it. Actually, you've really taught me something there, because I didn't look at it like that myself, you know? Yeah. What about even if you are on the right medication, I'm sure it does come with side effects.
Yeah.
And some people say that the side effects, even my own doctor recommended me, whatever you do, do not get on medication, because I was going through a horrible phase in 2019 with anxiety and panic attacks and all the physical sensations that come with panic attacks, nausea, acid reflux, increased heart rate, you know, the instant, the panic that you feel, like, you know, increased sense of heightened awareness of, you know, everything you're seeing, everything is like slow motion. And you know, and I had all of this, and I went to my doctor and I said, well, what is going on? They did all the blood tests they needed to do. They did everything, and everything came back negative. Nothing wrong with you physically, you know? So I kind of mentioned to my doctor, do you think this could be more of a psychological thing? And he said, yes, it can absolutely be, because the nausea was a huge thing for me. Or like this sick feeling of like, what is going on? Like day in, day out, just, it spurred from one huge panic attack that I had one day. And then from then it just kept, every day I was just had these horrible sensations. And he said that, you know, anxiety can cause the acid in your stomach to kind of come up, you know, and like kind of almost like create this horrible tension in your throat that just makes you always feel like you're going to throw up, but then you don't, and it's just a horrible feeling you walk around with. And he said, whatever you do, don't get on medication. So he spoke to me about therapy. He referred me to therapy and whatnot, and he said, don't get on medication because it can kind of zombify you or whatever. It can take away your emotions completely, and then you walk around with no feeling toward anything. And he really went for it, to be honest. I was really shocked at that. But yeah, how much do you agree with that? Just the general side effects.
I disagree that medication will make you zombify you. I think if you're put on the wrong medication or too strong of a medication, that could happen. My younger brother lives with ADHD. And it took almost like a decade for him to get the right medication. So he had ones that like zombified him where he wouldn't speak until the medication wore off. He wouldn't eat, he wouldn't do anything. There were medications that made him really angry. There were ones that made him lose so much weight. So it's finding the right medication. It's not that medication, if you're on the right medication for you and for your body at the right dosage, it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to zombify you. It can if you're on the wrong one. And I think that that's where the misinformation is. That's where the miscommunication is. But for me, on top of medication, I worked with a bunch of different doctors to find the right supplements that I needed to take. So if this medication could cause a reduction in hormones, get on the right hormone replacement. If this medication could lead to lower vitamin deficiencies or risk of vitamin deficiencies, get on those right supplements. So I get my blood test run routinely. I got an MRT panel to see what foods weren't good for my body, because it's not always the medication, it's not always the supplements, it's not always the lifestyle. It's sometimes different foods you're eating or different environmental factors around you. So finding the right mix of everything for you is what's important. It's not just one thing. So I think a lot of the misinformation also comes from we contribute everything to medication, but it's not just the medication. You're putting other things into your gut, and gut health is so important.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that is huge. That is huge. Apart from the medication, what is something that you did, whether it be therapy? I know you mentioned CBT there, but did you try to tackle any of that trauma through any other kind of methods?
Yeah, so journaling became something that's
Mm.
so huge for me. And I love to write. Writing is something that's always been a passion of mine. That's why Inspiring My Generation started as a blog.
Yeah.
So I used to wake up at 6:15 every morning and just journal my first thoughts. So before I was completely awake, before I had any time to think, just write down what I was feeling. And I learned a lot about myself because it was all my unconscious thoughts. And I learned what was eating at me. And then I started to work on that. Why is this eating at me? Why am I feeling this way? Where does that come from? Is that something that I made up in my head in a story I told myself? Or is that something, a story someone else told me? Or is it true? And you can't process until you know where something comes from.
Oh man, yeah, absolutely. Journaling has been huge for me as well, and so many people have recommended journaling, and now I'm starting to recommend it as well because it's a way, especially if you feel like things are being bottled up, inside of you, and it's like you can't get it. The subconscious thoughts that you're having that can actually manifest very physically. In my case, it did, with panic attacks, and but it's not until you actually explore what could potentially be in your mind, and mine was through, for example, dreams as well. Some conscious negative thoughts that I was having, writing it all down. And one time I had a therapist, and she said, once you write those thoughts once you've journaled, sometimes, especially with the negative thoughts, what you can do is almost like a symbol of I'm now done with that, is like ripping up all those negative thoughts, throwing it in the bin and saying, I'm done with that now, moving on with my life today, at least, not just like just today, I'm moving on with all those worries. I'm done with that. I'm moving on with something else. So I thought that was really incredible. So yeah, that's incredible. Journaling is a huge one. Francesca, I actually want to ask you, what has opening up about your story with mental health, what has that done for you? Whether you want to talk about the benefits or the challenges you faced, but speaking about this journey you've been on with mental health in such an open way, what has that done for you personally?
So in the beginning, it was really hard. Everyone was kind of against it. My family was like, don't admit to that. Don't tell people you've been in a psych ward. I had someone tell me, you'll never get into another college program. You will never get a job. You will never find someone to marry you. And I was like, really?
Really?
And at
What?
first that really ate away at me. And I was like, wait, should I not open up about this? Should I not talk about it? And I'm like, no, that's who I
That your
am. That's part
friends?
of my story. And if someone can't handle that, if a potential employer, a college program, or a potential soulmate or partner or whatever couldn't handle that, then that's on them. That's not on me. That's not a reflection of who I am. It's a reflection of who they are. So I started to open up about it more and more, and I had a lot of negative feedback in the beginning. But over time, I started to have people DM me, and they're like, because of you, I went to therapy. And I was like, wow, like that's amazing. And then people were like, because of you, I went to an inpatient treatment program and I got help that I needed, but I was so afraid to do it before. And I was like, wow, that's even more amazing. I started volunteering with the crisis text line and seeing how many people were also struggling and feeling like they couldn't talk about it. So I started to see how the stigma really affected so many people, and people were afraid to not only be honest about what they're going through, but afraid to get any kind of help or reach out for support. So
Mhm.
by opening up, I've been very blessed to see a lot of people get help because they heard my story and they saw, wow, if she could go through all of that and now have this nonprofit that's doing work and be so open and honest about it, and it hasn't destroyed her life. And I think that's a big thing. It hasn't destroyed my life. So it kind of encouraged other people to get help and support. And I just think it's the most amazing thing in the world every time someone goes and gets treatment or help because I opened up. That's maybe not saving lives, but it's doing a little role in helping somebody move forward with their lives and get the help and love and support that they deserve.
Oh, I think it counts as saving lives. I think it really does, because it also counts for the quality of someone's life, you know.
Yeah.
um to be able to just even bring someone out of a sense of misery or depression, and to think that you've helped them to actually go out there and explore the options of finding help, whether that be therapy or whatever it is, that is absolutely huge. And I want to say, on behalf of everyone that's watching this, a massive thank you to you, because what you're doing with this nonprofit is truly incredible, and you've inspired me, actually. So you can definitely take that away from anything you do. um I completely agree with everything you said there. Very powerful stuff. It's also helped me to open up about mine, and I found a sense of liberation and self-acceptance in myself, of being able to talk about it, because at first there was so much shock when I first came out about it on social media. I spoke about my mental health, and then people were like, Riel, really? You're like always so bubbly, and you're always up for a laugh and stuff like that, and no one could really wrap their head around it, because it's not their fault. I didn't talk about it, and I guess the assumption would be that, you're fine, you seem happy and whatnot, but as we know, everything is not always as it seems. um and over time, what talking about my mental health has done for me, just speaking about the benefits, it really has enabled me to make connections and bonds and certain relationships with people that I otherwise, I don't think I would be able to do, to connect on such a deeper level, because you find when because sometimes you get talking, and then you start talking about your mental health openly, they start to mention something about theirs, and then you start to find this commonality in struggle, in challenges, and there's something almost beautiful in that. And to form these bonds and connections where you can now almost like grow together by talking about it openly and helping each other and being there for each other and understanding each other has been huge. And yeah, in a very kind of uh if I'm talking about myself, it's just been so liberating to be able to do that, because I'm not hiding away and bottling up, and it's a secret, it's like, no, I'm going to talk about it. So yeah, Francesca, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And before we go, we need to plug your merch. We're not going anywhere before we plug the merch, because that's awesome. I'm going to get myself a jumper as well. Is that what you're wearing? You got the
I
inspiring?
am wearing one of them right now.
Awesome. That is awesome. Oh, that's incredible. Awesome. I'm going to get one of those. Francesca, so I want to end on this note. Are you up to like a fun game kind of thing?
Let's go for it.
Okay, so I want you to imagine this, Francesca. Okay. You are on, you wake up one day and you're on a desert island. Okay. A desert island. No one else around. It's just you. All right. And you wake up and you think, what am I doing? Like, what is going on here? Right. You've got kind of like tacky clothes on, it's all ripped up and everything. Anyway, so you get up and you start walking. And I'll tell you where you're walking. You're walking along that soggy sand bit, where the ocean hits the, yeah.
Yeah.
You're walking along there, where it just hits, and you're like, what is going on? So anyway, you're walking, and eventually you hit your foot on something, and it's the pinky toe you hit. The pinky toe is a bad hit. When you hit the pinky toe, it's bad, and you're like, like, what was that? So anyway, you pick it up, right, and it's a lamp. Okay, like I don't know if you've seen the movie Aladdin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you pick it up and it's a lamp, right? So what do you do with the lamp, right? You rub the lamp, okay? And poof, a genie appears out of the lamp, Francesca. Can you believe it? And the genie's name is Simon Watford, because that's just the name that we've come up with. Simon Watford, he's an interesting genie. Anyway, so the genie has been in there for 420,000 years. Okay, that's a long time he's been in the lamp for, right? And you're the first person to let him out. So he's very grumpy on this particular day. Obviously, he's been trapped in that lamp for 420,000 years. That's a long time, especially in genie years. The genie says to you, so he's very grumpy, right? So he says to you, I'm going to do a kind of bad thing here. I'm going to take your voice away from you, Francesca. Okay, so he's going to go, joop, joop, and you can never speak again. Okay. However, you don't look happy about that. So you can't speak again. So he's going to take your voice away. But before he does that, he's going to grant you, because you've actually let him out of the lamp, right? He does feel a little bit grateful. So he says to you, fine, before I do that, I'm going to grant you one final wish, right? And that one final wish is that you can say one last sentence, one last phrase, whatever you want to say. And that phrase is going to be echoed across the entire planet. The entire world is going to hear everything that you're about to say. It's going to be in every country, translated into every language. Everyone's going to hear it. But that is the last thing you can say before he takes your voice away. So the question is, what do you say, Francesca, to the entire world in that moment?
Wow. A really tough question.
I know. I get the same reaction all the time. People are like, how did you come up with that?
That's not where I thought this was going. I thought I was going to get like 3 wishes.
What's my 3 wishes?
You're like, your voice is going away.
You're like, what?
It's not a wish.
Yeah.
It would be,
Yeah, what do you say?
no matter how alone you feel, you are not alone, and you are worthy of love, kindness, and support, not just from the world around you, but from yourself. Never give up hope. You're going to get through this, and reach out for support. You may feel like you have to go through it alone, or that you are alone, but you're not alone, and you really don't have to go through it alone. Sometimes you need a helping hand. Sometimes you need a partner. Sometimes you need therapy, medication, supplements, anything, and that's okay. Just don't give up, because you're going to get through this. I think that.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Francesca. I really, really appreciate it. On behalf of myself and everyone that supports the Cup of Tea podcast, I really appreciate you coming on, because you've come on and you've completely blessed the show. So thank you. Did you want to add anything finally? I'll give the last word to you.
Just maybe a little bit more about Inspiring My Generation. But thank you so much for having me. You're amazing. And I love this podcast. So Inspiring My Generation also has this amazing encouragement card program where we make 350 handmade encouragement cards every month and donate them to patients hospitalized in psych wards. We're currently serving 3 psych wards within the US. And if anyone wants to volunteer and make cards and help let someone know that they're not alone, and even a stranger out there cares about them, I really, really appreciate it. So please look up www.inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about how you can get involved.
Oh, that's incredible. I want to get involved. That's amazing. That's fantastic. Oh, absolutely. So I'll put the website in the description. I'll also put it on the screen. And we can also plug your Instagram. Do you want to say your Instagram?
Yeah, so it's at Inspiring My Generation. Oh,
fantastic. At Inspiring My Generation, guys. Give it a follow. Check it out, because honestly, it's so pure and it's incredible. And yeah, it's the page to be following and the podcast to be listening to. Tuning out. It's Cup of Tea. Peace, guys. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.